let's see our next topic, chain reaction. So here we'll understand how the neutrons will propagate through the entire reaction, and what is the prominence of those neutrons, and how we can control them, or how we can control the chain reaction. All that we'll understand here. So I have given some indications here, you can notice here. So this yellow dot represents thermal neutrons, while this sky blue is nothing but uranium, pink represents barium, and this blue represents krypton. Let's go for that. Okay, so initially the different uranium 9235 nucleus I have taken many of. When one neutron start hitting this uranium 235, now you can understand how it is getting disintegrated. Have you seen there? Clear? So in different stages, this is the first stage, level 1, where the reaction started. This is second stage, because here we got two byproducts, which is two daughter nuclei, barium and krypton, and 3 thermal neutrons, and those 3 thermal neutrons are again being bombarded with uranium 9235, some other, and from each again we got barium krypton, barium krypton, barium krypton, and along with 3 thermal neutron from each. So here we got 3, and here we got 3 plus 3 plus 3, 9, and now from each again we are getting 3. Okay, so again at the end we will be left over with 27 thermal neutrons. So now how are you observing at what rate actually they are being propagated? So geometric progression, right? Neutrons are increasing in geometric progression, and at a particular point when we consider, or at a stage is reached, the very large number of nuclei are being split up and releasing large amount of energy in short time, and atom bomb is an example for this type of fission process. Are you getting the point here? And the chain reaction, whatever we are actually looking here, look here, this bombarding, and again these 3, those 9 are getting collided, and again now we got, see how many are, isn't it or not? Each one is giving a result, and this chain reaction can be controlled by slowing down the neutrons and by absorbing the neutrons, either of the way. And actually in order to slow down the neutrons, we usually use graphite or ordinary water or heavy water for this purpose, and in order to absorb the and of course these materials which slow down are called moderators, and for absorbing the neutrons we use boron or cadmium rods. Later anyway we have a nuclear reactor, there we can discuss in detail about all this, what is a moderator and what are the absorbents we are using, their control rods which we can call them as. Okay, there we can notice. Let's look at the next one. So you can see the 3 different stages here. In the first very beginning you can see number of fission stages, small n represents and capital N represents number of neutrons. In the first stage we have 1 neutron, in the second stage we have 9, that's it, right? Here one set, here one set, here one set, so 3 plus 3 plus 3, 9. In the third stage we have 27, so n equal to 3 power n. Are you getting the point here? Now 3 minimum number, right? We generally consider that, of course we are rounding up to the 3. I told you that average will be either 2 or 3, so we are considering the maximum condition. So 3, so 3 to the power of small n, number of fission stages, that's the condition here. Now let's look about the important topic which we call it as a critical size or critical mass. Anyway, in the neutron multiplication factor also, in the which is our next topic, there also we can discuss about. So critical size refers to which is nothing but, in order to continue this reaction, whatever the chain reaction we are actually speaking about, the mass of the fission material and size of the fission material plays a crucial role. So if the mass of the fissionable material which can sustain that chain reaction or not, that depends upon that factor, multiplication factor K. That also we will discuss about, basing on this number of neutrons in the present generation to the number of neutrons present in the previous generation, the previous stage. We have the next topic, there we can see. Okay, the critical size refers to the minimum size, or you can call it as with which the reaction should be continued. Remember that size of this particular matter what are actually considering here. Okay, so for chain reaction to occur, size of the fissionable material must be above the size called critical size. A released neutron must travel minimum through 10 centimeters so that it is properly slowed down, which is thermal neutron, to cause further fission. If the fission of the material is less than the critical size, then all the neutrons are lost. That's it, right? The size of the material is less than the critical size, then all the neutrons are lost, and we call them as lost neutrons. That's it, right? What happens if the size is not proper enough? They won't participate in the reaction, so neutrons are being wasted, and that was. If the size is equal to the critical size, then the number of neutrons produced is equal to the number of neutrons lost. If the size is equal. If the size is greater than the critical size, then the reproduction ratio of the neutrons is greater than 1 and chain reaction can occur, and that was. So minimum optimum size was critical size, that's what we call it as, and the respective mass we call them as critical mass. Now let us understand in detail basing on the neutron multiplication factor or the critical size, and of course basing on that how we can assign. Okay, let's start from this neutron multiplication factor. We can call or we can give the formula for this as, of course we represent this with K. K is nothing but number of neutrons present at the beginning of one generation divided by number of neutrons present at the previous. Are we getting the point here? So number of neutrons in the present generation divided by number of neutrons in the previous generation, we can be given as K. If K is less than 1, here we can have the conditions. So if K is less than 1, number of neutrons in successive generations decrease and chain reaction cannot continue. Chain reaction we have already seen, right? That was. So chain reaction cannot continue, and we name this situation to be as subcritical state. We call it as subcritical state. So if the K value is less than 1, chain reaction cannot continue. If K equal to 1, what if K is equal to 1? In that situation, the chain reaction will proceed. Chain reaction will continue or proceed, and that will be in a steady state, and chain reaction can be controlled which is in a controlled state, and we call it as critical state we call it as. And of course nuclear reactor works in this. Later we have topic nuclear reactor works in this kind of critical state. Later when we discuss about that we will understand. Now if K greater than 1, third case, if K greater than 1, the chain reaction is in uncontrolled situation, number of neutrons increases and reaction is said to be uncontrolled, which leads to the explosion of the nuclear reactor. Uncontrolled situation, and this is what we call it as supercritical state. And we cannot control this, and that atom bomb is an example for this. To sustain the chain reaction, the mass of uranium should be equal or more than a particular amount of mass, and what we call that mass? It's called critical mass, and of course the size also. Are you getting the point here? And if you speak in terms of this K, the size of the fissionable material for which the multiplication factor K equal to 1 is called critical size. If K equals to 1 for such a mass, if this situation is we get at that particular point, whatever the size we have the material, we call it as critical size, and of course the mass in that particular situation is called critical mass. Okay, and the chain reaction in this case remains steady or sustained, you can call it as. Are we clear with this, ma? Okay, right. Now let's look about the next topic, nuclear reactor. So this is the device in which a nuclear chain reaction is initiated, maintained and controlled. it works on the principle of controlled chain reaction and provides energy at a constant rate. So controlled chain reaction, just now we have seen, right, controlled chain reaction, which is nothing but this was if K equals to 1, critical state, which is nothing but, so a nuclear reactor will be operated in critical state. Now let's discuss about that device, so where the nuclear energy is converted into the required format of. Okay, look at the figure carefully. We have different parts. Let's understand each and every part separately. So nuclear reactor is a device which converts uses the process of nuclear fission and which can be carried out in a sustained or a controlled chain pattern, or chain reaction can be controlled. Okay, it uses uranium as fuel and it gives us the products like neutrons, radioisotopes, heat energy, and steam also will be produced to run turbines, and of course from there we can produce the electricity too. Electric power can be. Okay, look at the construction. First of all, this part I am speaking about here. Let me take the pointer. Look at this one. I am speaking about this. A nuclear reactor consists of thick blocks of carbon surrounded by thick absorbing walls of concrete. Carbon and as well as concrete, it will be here. You can notice here for this entire structure outline. Okay, nuclear fuel, and the material what we are actually using for this reactor to run is nothing but we call it as nuclear fuel, and it will be in the form of long cylindrical rods, which you can notice here, uranium rods. All these are we clear with this? Because large surface of the rods facilitates transfer of heat produced in them to the coolant and thus flowing around the rods, and that was the purpose we are using actually in the format of the rods. Are we clear with this? Okay, right. Coming to the next one, moderator. You can notice here, moderator, this liquid kind of. The moderators, what is the duty of a moderator? The material used to slow down the fast moving neutrons produced are called nothing but moderators. And in the nuclear reactor, moderator is either graphite, which is nothing but the carbon, or water or heavy water. And the important property of a moderator is moderators have low atomic weight and they should not absorb neutrons. They should not absorb, but they should slow down. Remember, so moderators have low atomic weight and they should not absorb neutrons. Remember all these points which will be important for your 1 mark questions. So when you are listening all this, make a note of all this. Make a note of yourself. And just giving you the diagrammatic approach. Draw this figure and as well as make a note, maintain your notes, so that will be very better for you when you are actually reading all this. Okay, right. Coming to the next one, we have here control rods. Can you see here? Control rods are here. The duty of a control rods is to absorb. Moderators will slow down while control rods will initiate and will increase. So the materials that can absorb neutrons are nothing but and controls the nuclear chain reaction are called control rods. Generally we will use cadmium or boron rods will be used for this purpose. So these are cadmium or boron. Okay, they can be moved in or out of the holes, which you can notice here. Okay, holes in the carbon blocks. If they are pushed in, more neutrons are absorbed and speed of the reaction decreases, and if they are pulled out, the number of neutrons absorbed decreases and speed of the reaction increases. That's it, right? The moment when you push in, neutrons will be absorbed, thus reaction will be controlled, will be reduced, and the moment when you take them out, there is no medium to absorb them, hence neutron will propagate and thus the fission will continue. Okay, coolant. Let's look about the coolant. Here it is. A coolant is nothing but a large amount of heat will be developed in this process. So in order to cool it, and the heat which is developed in the reactor because of the chain reaction, that has to be controlled. So the heat generated in the fuel elements is removed by using a suitable coolant to flow around them, and the coolants what we use are water at high pressure, molten sodium, etc. Generally we prefer for water, because that will generate the steam, and that steam will be used to run the turbines, and thus we can generate the electricity. So again, the AC motor, do you remember in the AC we have discussed to the turbines, the shafts will be connected to that. So here we are using the nuclear fuel instead of the coal. We are using the nuclear fuel, which is nothing but here. Okay, the protective shield which will be around this will be suitable, and of course will be used to protect the workers or the particular persons which are around there, to from the beta and gamma radiations which are actually here. Are we clear with this? Okay ma, right. So when the uranium fuel rods are placed in this cylinders, you can notice here, and when once the neutrons were bombarding with this, the reaction will continue, and if the neutron number is more, and if you want to control that, control rods will be introduced in that, and thus neutrons will be absorbed and we can control the reaction. And if you want to slow down the neutrons, the moderator will do the work. So are you getting the point here, how the entire process will work? Is it clear for everybody? Okay ma. Now let's look about the next topic, which is nothing but types of reactors, because basing on the use we have mainly two kinds of the reactors. One is the breeder reactors. Breeder reactors, and the second one is power reactors. Second one is power reactors. Let's see what is this breeder reactor and what is this power reactor we have from the reactors, from the nuclear reactors. Okay, breeder reactors are nothing but which converts a non-fissionable material such as uranium-238 into fissionable material, and the reactor produces or breeds more fuel than it consumes. So we whatever the non-fissionable materials if we are having, and that will be converted into fissionable materials or breeds that particular material. So fuel will be generated for us. Fuel, so that further it can be used for any purpose. So breeder reactors will breeds the fuel. Are we clear with this? So non-fissionable material can be converted into fissionable. While in the case of power reactors, the name itself speaks about that. Power reactors are nothing but the reactors which are used for the power generation. The name itself speaks about that. Okay, so whatever just like the typical model what we have seen, the same kind of. So these reactors will have an elaborate cooling systems which uses the water. So large amount of heat will be generated now. So that was, so this water absorbs the heat and produces steam, and the steam is in turn used to run the steam turbines, and which ultimately generates the electric power, and that reactors are said to be called as power reactors. So what they will give us, power reactors will give us power in order to. Are we clear with this? And the power generated by a nuclear reactor can be given as power P is equals to N into E by T, rate of energy transfer, of course, where N by T is nothing but number of fissions per second, E is energy released. N by T equal to number of fissions per second, fission rate, fissions per second, while E is nothing but energy released per fission, which is nothing but energy released in each fission, energy released in each fission. Are you getting the point here? Okay, so now if the number of fissions per second in a reactor of power 1 watt can be given as N by T will become P by, and of course then fissions per second will be around, if we substitute that, it will be around 200 MeV, right, we are getting. So if we substitute that, it will be around 3.125 into 10 power 10 fissions per second. So from that we can actually calculate. So the uses of the nuclear reactor and the atomic energy, let's see them. So uses of atomic energy, nothing but they will be used to generate electric power. The first and foremost, the purpose is to generate power, prime purpose or the prime use, and production of radioisotopes, to produce radioisotopes, that was the second, and will be used as a source of neutrons, because neutrons are very important for us in the research and the branch of various science branches. So will be used as a source of neutrons. Nuclear reactors and atomic energy can be utilized as, so source of neutrons. That's it, right? Each and every reaction are getting 2 to 3, and can be used to produce artificial lakes. It may look like weird, but it can be used to produce, because it causes a very damage right there, right? So that we can store the water if we do that. So large amount of mass can be replaced in a very single kind of, but very dangerous. That was a creation of for the artificial lakes. That's why we are calling it not natural, artificial lakes. And to divert the course of a river and to make tunnels like this, whenever the explosion is needed, we can use this atomic energy. And of course, very well known, it can be used for wars and in the warfare, for creating destructive atomic bombs and hydrogen bombs, very well known for you. And they can be used for driving automobiles and submarines and warplanes. Energy as it can be used in any format. So that was the other side of the science. So it has both the sides, right? So that was positive and as well as negative. Depending upon the mind it is using, we can use it. Okay. Let's look about the next one, nuclear fusion. So what do you mean by fusion? This is the first part of the graph, binding energy per nucleon versus mass number graph. Remember, right? So the process in which two light nuclei combine at extremely high temperatures to form a single heavier nucleus is called nuclear fusion. Suppose if I consider the hydrogen, which is most common or the most regular kind of the fusion reaction which we can expect. 4 hydrogens combines and gives us helium-24 along with 2 positrons plus 25.7 MeV, just like for the nuclear fission reaction. This is also the famous equation for the nuclear fusion. Look here, you can notice there the smallest of all combining to give us a stable one along with the particle radiation and then energy. So are we clear with this? Okay ma. Now the point is, in this reaction, mass of the helium is smaller than the sum of the masses of all the 4 protons. That's it, right? Proton 1H, H11, hydrogen 11 refers to that was. So this difference in the mass, whatever we are actually speaking about, will liberate as energy in the fusion process. But you understand there, this energy is small compared to the energy released, 200 MeV, but here is 25.7 MeV. Okay, but if the energy released per nucleon, if you consider, this is much smaller, isn't it or not? Look here carefully. In the uranium 235, energy released per nucleon in the fusion process, here in the fission, 1 neutron plus uranium 92 235 01. That's it, right? Is and now energy released is 200 MeV. This is, let me erase this. Isn't it or not? We got here 200 MeV, while in the fusion, this is for fusion, right? In the fusion we got 25.7 MeV. Total energy I am speaking about. Now think about the energy per nucleon. If you go for that, look here, in the fission it will be around 0.85 MeV, while here it is 6 MeV. Look here, 25 by 6, sorry, 25 by 4, 6, 24.5 odd. So it was around nearly 6 MeV per nucleon I am speaking about, while here it is 200 by 236 altogether it will be off. So it will be near 0.85. Remember, this is per nucleon I am speaking about, energy per nucleon. So now which is greater? So fusion is leading, while coming to the total energy, fission is leading. Anyway, in the differences we can see here. So if you compare that, it is nearly 7 times more than the fission energy per nucleon. Are you getting the point here? But the point is, or the problem is, to carry out the fusion of 2 nuclei, whatever you have taken, they must be brought very close, they must be brought very close to each other, so that they should overcome the repulsive force, isn't it or not, when they have to combine. And this is only possible at a very high temperatures like 10 power 7 Kelvin. That such a kind of temperatures are only possible when an atom bomb explodes. Then once fusion takes place, the energy released can maintain the minimum required temperature for the further fusion. but for that we have to consider the atom bomb explosion here, which because it need a very high temperature condition, right? So as fusion can occur at very high temperatures, the fusion reactions are also known as thermonuclear reactions. Okay, so hydrogen bomb is based on the fusion principle. Hydrogen bomb works on this. So for this to continue, first of all an atom bomb should explode, and then that energy will be continued to this. So that was because 10 power 7 Kelvin means not at all a normal temperature. So that was a much important thing which we have to consider here. Are we clear with this? Okay, ma? Right. Now let's understand the primary differences between fission and as well as fusion. Nuclear fission and nuclear fusion. Let's see the first one. A heavy nucleus will split up into two nuclei with intermediate mass number. I have given you the range, right? So that was. Coming to this nuclear fusion, unstable lighter nuclei are combined to form a stable nucleus. Here neutrons are required, while there protons are required. Here this is possible at normal temperature, while there it is possible at high temperature, just now we have seen. And here in the case of fission, energy released per nucleon is nearly 0.9 MeV, while here it is nearly 6 MeV. The percentage of mass converted is 0.1%, while here it is 0.7%. I'm speaking about the mass difference and all. So coming to this here, in the case of nuclear fission, fissionable materials are expensive. That's it, right? Uranium, all these radioactive elements are very cost, so they are expensive. While in the case of fusion, they are very cheap. In the case of fission, harmful reactions are produced, while in the case of fusion, harmful reactions are not produced. Are you getting the point here? Okay, ma? Right. But before that, let me give you a detailed explanation regarding the beta decay, because I told you already that in the earlier situation that we will discuss about the beta decay in a detailed manner regarding this particular why this is kind of. The point is, what we have to understand, when a nucleus disintegrates, we are speaking about that there will be an electron ejection from that. That's it, right? Electrons, beta particles are nothing but electrons, I told. In the nucleus, how there will be an electron? Ever thought of that? That's why I told you at the end I will discuss all this. Alpha decay, if it gives out, that was okay, we can because of the energy constraints or whatever it is. So how these are all actually happening, how this nuclei is actually disintegrating and how it is actually giving it out. So it is not actually that nucleus kind of. So now let us understand how that beta decay happens and what is that need and all. Okay. So coming to the beta decay, I am mentioning here, we will discuss this in separate detail because more important, right? For that we have to understand beta decay properly. Beta decay can involve the emission of either electrons or positrons. Electrons or positrons. Sir, what is this? A new word. A positron is nothing but the antiparticle of. A positron is an antiparticle of electron which has charge plus C and mass equal to mass of the electron. Are you getting the point here? And how we have represented electron? We will represent electron to be like this, no? -1, 0. This is electron. While for positron, it will be reverse, which means same mass but with the charge positive. Are you getting the point here? Don't confuse here. It is not proton. Proton doesn't have this kind of. Proton is heavier, right? But here, but here the mass of the electron and positron both are for them both this is same. Well, the charges are quite different. And remember, the electron or positron emitted in beta decay do not exist inside the nucleus. This is what my main point which I want to stress more and more. They are created at the time of emission just as photons are created when an electron in an atom makes a transition from higher energy to lower energy state. The conservation principles of energy, linear momentum, angular momentum will be obviously will be apparently violated in beta decay. That's kind of. So let me introduce the negative beta decay and positive beta decay so that you will understand clearly. Suppose if you consider the nucleus, nuclei, here we will speak in terms of nucleons, that too neutrons and as well as protons, which means nuclei having more number of neutrons, I will call them as neutron rich nuclei. Similarly, nuclei having more number of protons, I will call them as proton rich nuclei. So first of all, let us start from neutron rich nuclei. If I have a such kind of nuclei having a atomic number Z, mass number A, if it undergoes to the beta minus decay, negative beta decay or beta minus, you can call it as, then what happens? Mass number doesn't change, it don't have a problem. So but Z will be plus 1. Clear, right? So what we can write down here? Electron. Beta minus, no. And of course it gives us nu bar plus q. Look here, a new particle, charged particle we are speaking about. This is called antineutrino, we call it as. So emission of a beta decay is nothing but a neutron is transformed into proton and an alpha and an electron with an emission of antineutrino. Are you clear with this? So which means that's why I told you I am considering a neutron rich nuclei. Strictly speaking, if you want, I will write down in terms of the neutron with respect to the neutron. If I have a neutron, and that will be converted as proton first and then and this, and this is what nothing but antineutrino, we call it as. Okay, so a neutron is transformed into proton and an electron with emission of antineutrino, you can see here. And beta decay due to nucleus has too many neutrons relative number of to the, when you compare with the relative number of the protons, that wise kind of negative beta decay is because of. Now to conserve momentum, the spin and angular momentum, antineutrino is emitted, this here, because they will be violated, right? So to conserve that, we are actually considering. And before emission of beta particle, the momentum of the parent nucleus is 0. The antineutrino is emitted along with the beta particle with a momentum which exactly balances the sum of momentum of the beta particle and the recoiling daughter nuclei, whatever we are actually speaking about. Okay, it has 0 electric charge and its rest mass is very small, and of course you can call that to be like almost equal to 0. And if the negative beta decay, this is what the example we can give. Are we clear with this? Therefore in beta minus decay, atomic number of daughter nuclei increases by 1. Have you noticed that here? Right. Now let's look about the positive beta decay. Now what kind of nucleus we have to consider here? Proton rich. This is neutron rich, N rich. Now we have to speak about P rich, proton rich. For such a kind of, what happens here? A proton is transformed into neutron and a positron with emission of neutrino. Now look here, this. Here neutron converted, right? Now here it will be converted. Now what will be converted here? Proton will be converted into a neutron along with a positron, releasing particle called neutrino, nu, and of course energy. Here nu bar is called antineutrino. NEUTRINO. Okay, clear, right? I'll write down once again. Antineutrino. Sorry. And now here nu is called neutrino. Remember, these two are particle and antiparticle. If you consider neutron to be particle, antineutrino is the antiparticle of. Like for electron it is proton, so similarly kind of. Okay, are we clear? Electron and positron, similarly similar kind of neutrino, antineutrino. Are we clear with this? And of course, if you consider, if you want to speak about in terms of the nucleus, if I have XZA, if it undergoes for beta positive decay, what happens here? Y is the daughter nuclei having Z minus 1 and A, and E plus 1 0 here, and along with a neutrino and of course thermal energy now getting conserved, right? Are we clear with this, ma? So proton rich nucleus and as well as neutron rich nucleus, and how as it is neutron rich, right? So neutron will be converted to the proton and as well as a electron here, and of course you can see here, while proton rich is the proton will be converted to neutron and as well as positron. So keep that in mind. So you don't think that the nucleus is actually getting converted or giving out the electrons directly or the different kinds of. So it is actually, this is the process which is happening inside that. Are we clear with this, right?